Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Good to be with you on a Balls Wednesday. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. On Twitter, it's at J Cameron Show. You guys driving about town, appreciate you. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for listening on 93.3. Thanks for supporting us. And thanks to all of you who are watching on YouTube, Warchant TV, as it's known. Appreciate that as well. Well, goodness gracious. That's a tough night. Tough night for my beloved Noles. Goodness gracious, everybody. I don't know. I think we all went in with high hopes. I'll be honest with you, Tom, and we didn't talk yesterday about anything really. I didn't feel good about yesterday. It played out kind of exactly as my gut told me it was going to play out. I had a bad feeling about the Florida game, and I obviously didn't have a good feeling about the Syracuse game, even though the matchup is one in which Florida State had won that game previously earlier in the year. Syracuse made up a little bit differently. They figured out who to go to later in the year as their big man, the guy that we really didn't have to deal much with the first time we played. He only had 4 points. And their point guard got healthier, and he's quicker off the ball than we had to deal with the first matchup. So I knew the matchup was a little bit different, but I did feel like there would be, I don't know, to some extent, a bit of a come down after the emotional weekend that was. And then for Florida State baseball, the oddity is, now look, who knows how it would have gone if Evan Kress hadn't gotten hurt. I think that did. I know that Link said it afterwards, and he was careful not to place blame on it. But he said, I think, something to the effect of it took the wind out of their sails. Yeah, I could see that happening. Now, there were other factors, but yeah, that's not good. That's not good. And we'll have to wait and see what the extent of that injury is, because that could be problematic long term. But I don't know what it was. Something about the matchup, something about perhaps just the fact that we were undefeated, and, you know, it's baseball and you're not going to stay undefeated forever. But something in the back of my mind told me yesterday was not going to be a good day for the Noles. And yesterday was not a good day for the Noles. It was just grand opening, grand closing. As you lose the first game of the series to Florida, not the end of the world. As we well know, they'll play 2 more times. Florida State swept their ass last year, ruled them twice. So, you know, you're not just going to continue to beat a team of that caliber. So losing the game in and of itself isn't the end of the world. I do hope it serves as a bit of a wake-up call on a couple of issues. In particular, you know, the kind of pitching you're about to run into. The upgrade of fastball location and speed that you're going to see now if you're a Florida State hitter as we get into conference play. Everybody's got an ace in the ACC, pretty much. There are very few teams that don't. So you're going to have a game or two where somebody can locate and throw harder than really just about anybody you've seen through the first 15 games prior to last night.
Yeah, agreed. I got into this a little bit. I was on the baseball forum during the game, and around the 6th inning or so, when it's really setting in and you're getting to the 3rd time through the order and you're seeing some of the same issues come up with the lineup, I dubbed it a reality check. Like, you know, this is a reality check for this group where they need to respond and elevate. And there was some pushback. People out there bowed up. It's the Florida game, and they're saying, you know, that it's a midweek game. They could be fluky. Man, there was nothing fluky last night about the way the bats matched up against Florida's arms. They, you know, O'Sullivan didn't need to go to 9 guys because his first 2 gave him 6 really stellar innings, and they had excellent stuff. And they finished the game with guys with excellent stuff too. But it's not to say that they can't elevate and adjust to what they saw last night. But it was the first that they saw of that kind of caliber of pitcher, and they were overwhelmed by it. Last year's group never scored fewer than, what was it, like a dozen runs against Florida? I think that 12-8 was the lowest run output that we had when we played them down in Gainesville last year.
Right.
We gave that lineup credit for being world beaters. This lineup we knew coming into the season was going to need a little bit of time to grow. Link was very meticulous on expressing that point from his preseason interviews, even into the last couple of weeks, they're not up to snuff like last year's group was. Doesn't mean they can't grow into it. Good sign that Miles Bailey hits a home run late in the game, adjusts to some of the heat that he saw. He didn't even catch that ball again. It's amazing how he can hit one off the trademark or just off the sweet spot, and it's long, long gone. I love to see that because hopefully he can react and grow like he did from the first weekend of the season into the best part of who he became in the easy part of the schedule. So there's a chance that they can, get all this stuff fixed and they can grow into something that can handle that kind of pitching, but they were overwhelmed last night. I'm less concerned with the pitching side of it because Crest throws everything out of whack. Doesn't mean I'm not concerned about some things there, but Florida was far more detail sound top to bottom than we were last night. And that's why they won the game.
Yeah, I know. It's the weirdest thing when we talk baseball. I especially, I will say I've been very excited. We've had some listeners in the chat mention this before and a couple of others on the boards. I've received an email from a guy as well that I think last year's team was a team that was just eminently likable, and obviously they had a lot of success, and they go to the College World Series, and Link's a former All-American here and a very likable guy, a well-prepared guy. The staff is likable. The players themselves obviously were elite a year ago, especially on offense. So I think that's a long-winded way of me saying that we now are talking to some newer baseball fans. I got to be reminded of that on occasion. And the tendency in all other sports is to, have what I would dub an overreaction or a dramatic reaction anyhow to wins and losses. And in other sports, it's more realistic to do it because they don't play nearly as many games in those other sports. So like in a football season, losing a game is a big deal. Losing a game in a football season is a significant deal in college football in particular. In pro football, you can go, 9-8 these days and, go on a deep run in the playoffs, but you might even win your division. but in other sports, in college football, you lose a game, it has a significant impact, but a single game does not in baseball at all. Not in professional baseball, unless it's the postseason, and not in college baseball, certainly. And that doesn't matter if it's a loss midweek to somebody like a Stetson, who you should beat, in a vacuum, or if it's a loss against an arch rival like Florida, which you think you could maybe derive more meaning from. Maybe not. Maybe that's just a night where Florida outplays Florida State, and it's one game, and we'll find out. So I'm always very careful to decide whether I want to go all in on something that I see as a developing problem or the byproduct of a bad night at the office. I think it's a little bit of both last night for Florida State. And, there's some trends there that were, once again, a light was shined upon. I can name a few of them. I mean, first of all, to your point, Tom, there's nothing flukish about a game in which, 2 through 6 in the order goes 1 for 18.
Right.
And that one is a solo shot at the end of the game.
Right. And it's just overwhelmed. You can see it's overwhelmed by what it saw. Doesn't mean I don't think that this group is powerless to do anything about it. That would be the difference. But it was resounding. That was a statement last night. And that you can't take that away from what we saw.
No. And they only drew 2 walks, so they didn't have a lot of great ABs. I thought, I will say, that Gage Harrelson had some good at-bats, really good at-bats. He continues to just really impress me on the whole. I jotted my notes here before we came on just to make sure I got to everybody, the good and the bad, by the way. No, I thought, so I thought Gage Harrelson had great ABs. There was continuing to impress me this year, by the way, Tom. You know what? Not only does he, it's a little cheapy homer, but it's a homer nonetheless. But he's really good defensively. He's having a good year.
Oh, he's having a really good year. And there was one at bat for Harrelson specifically. This is a nothing throwaway at bat. I'm impressed with how much pop he has in his bat. It was the opposite field liner. It looked like it was going to be a bleeder over shortstop, and it got all the way basically to the chest of the left fielder.
Yeah.
That's oppo power that you don't think about moments like a can of corn to left field as a moment of power. We're not exactly in 97-degree temperatures with 106 heat indices right now.
No.
He's going to be a fascinating player, I think, with there's more pop in that bat than I thought that goes along with the speed and the mind. That's a nice guy to set the table for you.
Yeah, they got a good pickup in him. There's no question. He's a good player. He's good defensively, like you're alluding to the speed. He's a good player. He's just a good player. Like I said, Faro's having a good year. I got to be. I want to be reluctant to some extent here, but buddy, Jackson behind the plate. I don't know how much more we need to look at that. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. He was terrible. He was terrible.
Yeah, not every wild pitch needs to find its way to the backstop.
He's not very good. And that this is where we're at. He may become very good. He's not very good right now. So, and I think that you're starting to hear it. Link kind of alluded to it. He's a little bit nicer than I am. He's just like, well, he had a tough night. Nobody works harder than he does. I'm like, okay,
right.
Yeah, well, that's great, but he's not getting it done behind the plate.
Well, and at the dish too, like I get that he turns a bad call, and look, this is like 95th in the list. I don't think the home plate umpire had anything to do with last night's game, but my man had a bad night. We'll say that. He turned around a 2-strike situation where a lot of kids crater, and he hits an opposite field single. That's all fine and well. The thing I'm worried about is he did come out the gates red hot, line drive rate, hard hit rate, and it was a ton of atom balls. Sometimes that's your hot streak, and then you revert. And that's the cruel thing about baseball is people look at your average after the year's over, and they say, what the hell? Well, your hot streak was just a terribly unfortunate and unlucky situation where you're crushing the baseball, and you either hit it into Gold Glove outfields or you hit it right at a second baseman, even though that was going to make its way to the wall, and he jumps up, makes a catch. That's an interesting situation to monitor with catcher and DH, just to see how they balance that thing out moving forward.
100%. So, while we're picking through the good and the bad, I think they gotta look long and hard what they're doing behind the plate there, because I think defensively that is a problem for them. We just got done praising Harrelson and Faro. I think that you're right. It was a nice sign at the end of the game to see Miles Bailey hit a home run. He doesn't have to hit it square to hit it out. He's that strong, and his bat speed's that good. And he's been a quick learner so far.
Yep.
Let's hope that's like we're just watching it play out right then and there, because that's a good arm that he took deep. And then, last night they had a lot of things that befell them in a way. I think Link's comment about they managed the game pretty well, given that it could have really gotten ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's right about that. I mean, they found a way to get out of innings that could have been huge innings that, where it was just one run, or they'd make a defensive play that they needed to make, or they'd get a big strikeout, or they'd find a way. But you have the injury, and then you have the play where immediately, you're throwing the ball away on a pickoff move. I mean, this starts to unravel pretty quick for Florida State.
Yeah, well, Florida was excellent situationally.
You get a 2-out single to score a run early. Yeah.
You hit a handful of batters, you walk a ton. Now that's been a problem for the bullpen, and this is something that I've been you can't complain too much 15-0, but I've been bringing up as we're talking about this baseball team over the last couple of weeks, the guys that they thought, I don't know, a little bit inconsistent here. Mason Martinez has been awesome. He's been an emerging player. Mm-hmm. This is what Mike Capozzi talked about. He said, well, we have a lot of guys that we like, but then once you get into the season itself, that's when people really separate from each other. And some of the players that they were expecting to be, lead arms in the bullpen have been inconsistent at best. John Abraham is one of those. And Ben Barrett's been one of those.
Yeah.
But then you have Mason Martinez who emerges. And, hey, look, I understand he gives up a couple of runs later, but the situation that Joe Charles gets out of, this is what you're talking about. You could be run ruled last night if you don't get key outs in that situation. I mean, there's nobody out when he comes in the game, and he manages through that inning. That is massive for that young man's confidence. Good to see Hudson Rowan at least get back on the mound. Maybe he can be something that's cultivated later. I'm less concerned about the bullpen, but I'm not concerned about the bullpen. This is a team that's going to have to grow a little bit.
Yeah, it's a wait and see sort of thing. I'll tell you what I think is interesting, and this is something that hurt them a year ago. And, I think it might just be it's the byproduct of you're dealing with college pitchers and guys who are on their way to someday maybe pitching in the pros, but they're not there yet. They're not a refined product, and we're watching them try to become that. because they miss in the zone on pitchers counts all the damn time. And I'm really nobody cares. Link doesn't care, and I don't need anybody over there to care. It's not like some sort of threatening thing. And I love Micah Posey, but I am damn tired of watching guys miss in the zone on 0-2 and 1-2. When you've got somebody buried, and it's a situation where, we know from before the season, the interview, the race is can you get to 1-2 or 0-2 or 1-2 before you get to 2-1?
Yeah.
Well, we get a lot of guys into 1-2, 0-2, 2-2, all pitchers counts, and a ball catches way too much of the plate, and you let a guy wriggle off the hook, or come through in a situation where they're dead and buried. You've got them; they're done. I get. You're not going to get everybody out that you get to 0-2. We watch it all the time. It happens. Guys make adjustments. They shorten up. They try to put the ball in play. But man, we make it a lot easier to put the ball in play when we throw a strike on 0-2.
Yeah, that's the difference between contact and hard hit rate in a pitcher's count. I agree with you. Link agrees with you. And, Micah said that last year, that Link, that is a pet peeve of his.
Yeah.
In the dugout, goes, that was 0-2 again. That's something that Micah is well aware of, and it pisses him off.
Well, I love it when, he says that to Micah. He also says, boy, that cut a lot of the plate.
Right. Right. And he said that's on 0-2 again. Yeah. And that's where, they're trying to ball, as Micah would say, they're trying to ball it, and get you to offer and swing outside the strike zone. That is the difference here a little bit. This isn't as stark of a difference as it was under 11 or Mike Martin Jr. For that stretch towards the end of 11's run, and then Mike Martin Jr.'s tenure, where Florida has all the stuff and we have none of the stuff.
Right. No, it's not that. Yeah.
But that's the difference between 96, 97 and 93, 94 is what you're talking about. You can miss in the plate if you have arm side run like the second kid that came out of the bullpen last night did. I thought, frankly, that is a dude last year, just looking at him. This is anecdotal. This has nothing to do with analytics. That kid looked amped up, nervous, and adrenaline-laden last night, their second pitcher, who has really nasty stuff. But he's herky-jerky. He's moving around. You can see his eyes are darting all over the place. He finally settles down after he gets about 3 or 4 outs. But I think last year's lineup is veteran enough to tattoo that sucker, and he's going to implode in here mentally. But last night, we're just overpowered by that kind of awesome stuff. And the next thing you know, by about batter 4 or 5, he's dotting the outside corner at 97. And you're like, okay, well, what are you going to do about that? Florida may very well have the best stable of arms that we see all year long. Could be. That's one of the talking points coming out of their program in the offseason was they needed to address that issue. And they did. They threw numbers and velocity numbers at the problem. They might be the best we see. I know it's a midweek, and so you're not seeing their starters, but I'm just saying about depth of arms. This is a good wake-up call for us. I think in the end, you never want to lose this game, but I think it's an excellent wake-up call because we might have been feeling our oats a little bit too much, too, as a program. You get the sense we were walking around with a little extra swagger, and Link was demeaning some of that in his post-games the last week or two. I think now today is a day where you can go, guys, this is why I'm telling you what I'm telling you. Will you please lock in a little bit?
You hit 4 batters, you walk 6, and you have 3 wild pitches.
And
you are
credited with a pass ball. We should have been at least one, but
yeah. Well, I would have. Yes, you know where I stand on this. Yes, at least get in front of the ball. There is that. You don't always have to make the play. It just doesn't have to go to the backstop. There is that, and then obviously you're overwhelmed at the plate, so it's a thorough ass kicking. There's just no way around it. It's a thorough ass kicking, but I think it can serve to do you right. I can't imagine that we'd get anything less than their undivided attention as we open conference play, fresh off a beatdown against your arch rival who overwhelmed you in every sense of the word. They ran the bases better than you. They pitched better than you. They hit better than you. They did everything better than you. And now all of a sudden you've got to be humbled a little bit because there's a team just 2 hours from you that may be better than you. That's like all of a sudden – all that bravado after every time we get on base. Let's slow our roll here. Let's figure out, let's get locked back in here. I don't, again, we may go on to win the next 2 times we play Florida and win the season series. We'll see. I don't know. And they can be very, very good by season's end. But they've got work to do. They've got real work to do because they're not great out of the bullpen. They're okay, but they're not great. And the lineup isn't nearly as deep, obviously. It could never have been going into the season. And there's some pieces to work with that we can get excited about, and some guys having good years already, and some guys that I really think portend, like when you watch their at-bats, of good things to happen as the season goes on. But yeah, they got work to do. I'm anxious to see the Boston College series this weekend because BC goes into Virginia and takes 2 of 3, and that's maybe a very good team. We don't know. It's early in the year, but they've got enough to go beat Virginia so they can beat you.
The other thing, real quick, on the positive side, yeah, you had a couple of arms that emerge and meet the moment, which is good. But I think this part of the season, you come out of 15-0. And last week's game, for example, is 11-1. You're going to run rule them. It's 11-5. Same inning, bases loaded. You get something hit to the wall. Like, you're escaping these close shaves, so you can convince yourself, like, there's no danger. You got burned last night. I'm not rooting for Florida State to get burned, but it's nice to see that Link has now something that he could point to and say, "All right, guys, this is what we need to tighten up." And I think it's within their reach to do so. Last year's team was special. I think as we go along this season, we might be a little bit more hurt by the check swing and some of the mistakes that were made against Tennessee in game 1, because that group was loaded. It was absolutely loaded. This group does have a chance, Evan Crest's injury notwithstanding, and let's hope, man, that usually doesn't end well.
I didn't like the pointing to the forearm. That wasn't good.
No, so I found an illegal YouTube stream so I could use the DVR service to go back, because ACCNX, you can't rewind.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched every pitch of his outing. I think when he hit the batter is when it went, because he usually has an arm recoil on his follow-through.
Mm-hmm.
It changed drastically on ball 1 to the next hitter. It changed drastically, obviously, in the pitch that he came out. But that notwithstanding, last year you needed Carson Dorsey to be nails for you. Cam Leiter was not available, still isn't. This year you've got a chance to stack more pitchers in a weekend setting and set yourself up on the mound, as long as you can have competent at-bats and run the bases a little bit better. So this is within the margin, but this team is a little bit more of a journey. Last year's was more ready-made.
The Leonard Hamilton era officially ended last night as Florida State goes to the ACC tournament. Tom, your dream of a magical run never gets off the ground. There is no liftoff. There's not even a little hoppy. There is nothing. It is over. We'll talk about it next. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. And in the end, it is a loss for Florida State to Syracuse. They whittled it down, and gave themselves an opportunity maybe late. You were thinking possibly. At so many points in this game, really just from Jump Street, Florida State trailed Syracuse and, fought just to keep it interesting at halftime. At one point, you're down 16. It doesn't feel like Florida State's going to make it a game at all. To their credit, I suppose, they do go on that 10-0 run and get that thing back to a reasonable number. And then really it got very interesting in the final couple of minutes, where Florida State had a chance a couple of times to maybe steal a game that they largely trailed. But this is, really kind of indicative, I thought, of what the team was. They're not good enough defensively. They don't shoot it well enough. And it wasn't a good basketball team this year. It was an average basketball team, and average basketball teams do average things. And they lose this game. And really, it was more than breaking down the game and the hows and whys of the loss. It doesn't matter. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't going to win the ACC tournament. We all knew that. And we had tongue-in-cheek fun with it. Tom talks about the magical run in March. It would have been great, but they're not that team. And, I thought it was poignant yet again. Leonard talked about being blessed to do something most people never get the opportunity to do. He seemed very appreciative. I thought it was cool that the ACC honored him. I thought all those things were nice. Really, it's been a fun 72 hours or so, or a little bit more, for Leonard Hamilton, at least to get the recognition of the man's accomplishments and of the person that he is, most importantly. That happened. But I think most of us have turned the page. Leonard said it as much last night that he was ready to move on to the next chapter in his life as well. Happy to hear that. I think it can be very difficult when you've done something your entire life to then have to come to grips with the reality that that thing that you have called a passion and has been a love and a way of life for the bulk of your adult life, if not all. When that comes to an end, man, I think maybe that because I'm older now and I don't talk about these things through the lens of a 27-year-old, 26-year-old, the way I once did. I talk about it through the lens of a person who's a father, who has a 17-year-old who'll be a senior next year, who has recognized the comings and goings of the legends of this program, whether that be Bobby Bowden, Mike Martin, or now Leonard Hamilton. I'm a little bit more measured in the way I think about these things. I think it's difficult, and it made me a little sad. I'm hoping Leonard finds some peace and happiness with whatever remains. He's in the back chapters of the book. There's no getting around that. But there's still, fruitful things that he can pursue. And I know he has other passions, so I hope that he does. I say that to say that while it was touching, I'm ready to move on. I think that this program needs a fresh set of eyes. I think that Luke Laux will be given obviously every opportunity. I do think it was smart of them to hire a young man. I think it's a young man's game right now. I think coaching, generally speaking, is a pretty young man's game. Unless you can establish a level of excellence in which the machine begins to operate on its own because of reputation. For example, when Coach K got to Duke, it wasn't an elite program, and he struggled mightily, and he came this close to being fired. Everybody knows that story. But he got it turned around in time. And not only to his credit did he get it turned around, he turned it into a juggernaut. And somewhere along the way, the juggernaut recruits itself. Just like kids growing up in the 90s, coming out of high school to play football, didn't need to be told what Florida State football was. They were well aware of what Florida State football was. It was the creme de la creme of college football, along with a Nebraska, a Miami, schools of that ilk. So, our program is not that. It has never been that. It has never been a huge draw. So I think you need to get a young, tireless, innovative, fresh set of ideas to work with the problem that Florida State has in recruiting. I don't know if this is believable or not, but yesterday I read, Tom, an account dedicated to covering college basketball, whose name escapes me now because it was in my timeline. It's one of millions of things in my timeline. But this particular site noted that Miami's NIL budget for basketball beginning next year is going to be $8 million for Jai Lucas. And, it struck me that that's a different set of circumstances and opportunities for Miami that exists for Lucas that doesn't exist for Luke Laux. Does not. So for Luke, in that opening press conference, which we've documented, to admit that he is not going to spend a lot of time on guys that would require you to have $8 million in NIL money, it's probably a good way to get off the ground, which is a firm grasp and understanding of the realities of the circumstances at coaching Florida State University basketball. And, if you can turn this into something, then that budget goes up. If you can turn this into wins, you can turn this into consistency. They don't have a choice any longer. As I've stated before, the Success Initiative now means you have to view the basketball program differently. I'm not trying to suggest that view is going to be a massive influx of cash that didn't exist before, but you cannot sit idly by and be mediocre or worse in basketball year over year when it now serves as not only a moneymaker, but one that helps close the gap for you to some degree in a way that no other sport beyond football does. Football being the king, of course. Baseball will not do that for you. It's not factored in. Softball does not do that for you. Soccer does not do that for you, and there's nothing against those sports. They're all wonderful, and I want us to kick ass in each and every one of them. But they are not the ones that are going to help bridge the gap further between you and the money that you lack while competing against SEC teams. Basketball will. And I'm hoping then that Luke can get this rolling to the extent that if we start to annually go to the tournament, the way that Leonard had it rolling for a while, we start seeing further investment, and it begets further investment, which begets further investment.
Yeah, my only question when I hear that number of $8 million is how much does success initiatives actually pay in basketball? Is it $3 million if you make it a distance? Is it 4? Is it 5? Because 8 seems like a total ROI nightmare. You want to be competitive in everything, but that just seems egregious. Immediately, I do the thing that many of our fans do. Do they really have that much money for football? Why can't they just make that a $5 million or $4 million NIL budget and throw that 3 or 4 more million towards football because they could bolster their roster over there, where success initiatives will pay in big buckets of cash? Because the last I checked, it's about 3/4 to 1/4, 75%, 25% football to basketball on ROI, or it might even be 80-20.
Mm-hmm.
I find that budget to be outrageous. But look, that's their program, and if we had it, I'd be really thrilled about it. But this is going to be an uphill climb, for Florida State basketball, unless Luke has a couple of people who really, really are interested in Florida State basketball winning. Maybe he does. Just
so people don't think I'm making it up, that I went and found it. It was from the Basketball Diary, and again, I don't know how credible anything is on the internet, so if they could be wrong. It could be a made-up number. Seems awfully odd and specific.
Well, some programs absolutely spend that much. I mean, BYU's top kid that they brought in was costing 4 or 4.5.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. No, they do. They absolutely do. But like, to read the tweet here again, Jay Lucas and the University of Miami will have an estimated $8 million in NIL budget to compete for elite talents this spring and summer. It's about 3 times more than what Miami's NIL budget was this past season. The U is open for business in the world of basketball. So that was the tweet. And, we'll know soon enough whether or not that's true. These aren't things that elude us. We end up having an idea of something close to the figure being spent for all these programs. If you want to get to the bottom of it, typically you can find that information. It takes a little digging, takes a little work, and it takes a little know-how, but usually you have an idea of what the number is. That's how we found out what Cam Ward was making. That's how we found out what a lot of players have made in their transfer endeavors. So we're going to know. If they bring in a $2 million player, well, they have at least $2 million, and then we'll add from there. So, conversely, Florida State does not have that. They do not have that, and they have nothing close to that in their NIL budget. Nothing close to it.
Yeah, correct. Yesterday you read off the contract details during the bonus hour, and it's, the things that I cared about the most were to see what is Luke making relative to Leonard, and it's less. And it climbs up as time goes on. What was the assistant salary pool or the staff pool in totality? 1.7. All right. If I recall an article from a few years ago, looking at Stan Jones' salary, that was around 300. So if you're thinking about 2-3 guys on the bench, and then you get a couple support staff members, that's not bad. 1.7 doesn't seem too terrible to me. And then you've talked about how the NIL budget's going to be a little over $1 million. All right. If you can get maybe another one of those minority owners that Luke Laux is talking about, maybe you can get that thing up to a 1.5 or 2, and then you become a factory for development. That's what the goal has to be. But I'm with you. As Leonard is walking through the hallway and the ACC network is showing that moment, and it bums me out because even I start to mark the times. This is somebody who is the head coach of Florida State men's basketball when I was in high school, and he was on that sideline that first night I was here in Tallahassee all the way to last night. Okay, Luke, it's time. You go get these guys. Let's see what you can do. Let's see what kind of hell you can raise. We're going to be an underdog program. That's easy to get behind as long as you don't look incompetent. And he's very serious about that. He even said on the desk of the ACC network when he was interviewed before the game last night that he's lost friendships and burned bridges because of how competitive he is. I believe him. And you need to be that guy in order to make this thing work.
I think that when you're talking about coaching at the highest levels of any sport, you want to bring in people that are that kind of maniacal. You're going to pay them large sums of money with a singular goal. And we don't kid ourselves. We don't, this is no pie in the sky 1982 conversation about molding young men and becoming great students. It's preferable that they do that. And it'd be nice that they represented your university in that way. But these salaries are not based on a kid's GPA. They are based on whether or not you win basketball games in this case, and whether or not you go to the postseason, and whether or not you win games in the postseason, and that you routinely put yourself in a position to play in high-profile games and succeed in those games. That is true of football as well. I think Mike Norvell is a good person. I think Mike Norvell is a good man from what I can tell. I don't know. We don't ever really truly know these guys, but short of that caveat, just to protect myself, every context clue I have seems to suggest he's a good guy. That's great. Well, he went 2-10 last year, and he can be a good guy somewhere else if they suck this year. So, that's how this works.
That's right.
And that's the beauty of sports. You don't get this, you don't get it twisted. We all know the deal. So, Luke, who I like, and I think people can tell, I know a little bit. I like his mentality. I like knowing that he's a ruthless competitor. If he stinks, I'll say it, and we'll have to move on. I'm hoping that mentality means that it almost is a buffer against having the kind of disastrous campaigns that I'm referencing. I would like to think that to a certain degree, early on, there's real momentum that you get with having, brought in a fresh set of eyes and a younger voice in the room, and somebody who's going to be innovative, forward-thinking, and modern. He's got relationships and connections throughout the NBA. That includes basketball operations and scouting departments all over the country. He's friends with a lot of guys that are former college coaches, a lot of guys that are assistant coaches in the league. I think he should have a pretty good handle on talent assessment and getting good advice from lots of those sources, and he will not be afraid to call on them.
Nor should he be. Because you don't have time.
No.
This is one thing that Mike Norvell didn't get, and people roll their eyes, but it's just a fact. He didn't get a chance for that first impression. You got to strike now. You have that first impression. You have the opportunity in this moment because you were just coaching the Kings last week. I say that more. We were just playing San Antonio on a Friday, and I was on a plane within 2 days of coming out. Yes, say that louder for everybody in the back. You got to use all that cachet that you've built up. Because if you are awful and you're in the 14 seed like Syracuse was in next year's ACC tournament, people won't give a crap that you were coaching the Kings a year ago and you were assistant coach and you were traveling and you had 50 nights with only 12 nights in your – but nobody would give a crap. So you have to strike now. And so hopefully he's got a friend or two that can help bolster the budget just to make it an immediate surge. And I wonder what he's going to do with some of the guys that are currently on the roster. And I mean, obviously, everybody is constantly a free agent, and that's why it's a young man's game. So you're going to have to be able to deal with managing that kind of stuff day to day. But I wonder, of the players that they have on the roster, who does he like bringing back? I mean, maybe Davis, maybe keep Thomas. But this could be a total overhaul. I'll be fascinated to see. You're going to know what he thinks about where we were as a program in the next 3 or 4 weeks. You're going to know that very soon.
The biggest thing that we're going to find out is not just player assessment. We got to go to break, but it's also like the staff. I got asked yesterday by somebody, will he bring Stan back? I don't know the answer to that question, but I would think not. Also I jokingly said, his answer regarding the couch was bad news for Stan. So, I mean, to me.
Ooh. Tell me you were actually asking about the couch.
I was asking about the couch, but there's a little something there. It's Jeff Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. The first one is in, Tommy. I will tell you which one I have here. I will pull it up on my phone while we're doing the show. Here we go. I have... I'm crossing my fingers on this one. Where's my guys? There they are. Good radio, Jeff. Good radio. So we're going Corey Connors, Siwoo Kim, Robert McIntyre, Hideki Matsuyama, Aaron Rai, and Sepp Straka. Team 1.
Okay.
Now, I will have multiple teams, and I will have individual bets in top 20, top 10, top 5s, and outrights. And they may differ greatly. I'm heavy on Ludwig Aber. All of these.
Who's the expensive guy on that team, if that's what you're playing under the cap?
The expensive guy is Hideki Matsuyama.
Oh, Matsuyama's in the middle. That's right. Okay.
Matsuyama is $9,900. You have $50,000 to spend on your lineup, and $9,900 went to Matsuyama, $8,600 went to Sepp Straka, $8,300 went to McIntyre, $8,200 went to Siwoo Kim, $7,900 went to Corey Connors, and Aaron Rye was $7,100. Now, Aaron Rye, and by the way, that's a $50,000 on the nose salary by yours truly. Nice. I will point out that Aaron Rye is the horse for the course here. So you get him on the cheap at $7,100. If you guys are putting together a lineup, his data golf numbers at this place are very good. So that's how you can go that route.
Yeah, I was looking at the weather report for the weekend, or the whole tournament, and everything seems to be A-okay early on. The wind is what matters. This is like football for overs and unders. You don't really care about rain as long as it's not flooding or snow, as long as it's not a blizzard. It's the wind that matters the most. But there's apparently a front that's pushing in Saturday night. So that doesn't really affect what you're doing if you're playing a 4-round format like you're talking about. But after 36 holes, take a look at some guys that are going to be teeing off earlier in the day on Saturday that are still within reach, that have some cachet. So let's say that Rory or Shane Lowry or, JT or Morikawa, a big name, is about 5 or 6 shots off the lead, maybe 7 or 8 shots off the lead into the weekend. And they're teeing off on Saturday at noon. If they can get off that course before the front blows into Sawgrass, that's the guy to hammer for a top 5, top 3, or a win, because there's no problems with the forecast until about 5 o'clock on Saturday, when the sustained winds are going to be near 20 miles an hour, which means gusts around 30 for that finish on 16, 17, and 18. Buddy, this is keep watching that weather forecast, because you might have some 36-hole live plays to make. They're
also talking about Sunday possibly with rain, right? I mean, so you have that front coming in that you're talking about, which I think brings rain with it. Look, this is a perfect time to kind of re-up and reassess and go in. If Shane Lowry's hanging around and you get that Sunday round in inclement weather, I'm hammering that all day long. Any of these guys that are playing over in Scotland, Ireland, Europe in general, maybe a Tommy Fleetwood. Just people who have played in inclement weather because they play the DP World Tour and stuff like that as well. It's helpful. I mean, that's where a lot of those guys, I don't care if they're from, wherever, Portugal, South Africa, Spain, whatever. If they're playing in the DP World Tour, they play a lot of events with terrible ass weather. I remember Brooks Koepka talking about that. It was just like, good God, man, every week, freezing cold, wet, rainy, wind, you name it.
I mean, that's Rory too. He's a mutter. He likes slow greens, and he likes wet conditions, because he can carry the ball 20, 30 yards farther than everybody. And frankly, it keeps him from hitting too many wedges, which he sucks at. So you're hitting actually 9 and 8 irons into the greens. But this is, just keep an eye on that. So let's say the lead's 11 and Rory or Shane are at 3 under and they make the cut on Saturday.
Yeah, you're like,
hammer it. Because I will. That's a recommendation that I'm going to follow.
Love this event. We could see history. We already saw it a year ago, just how good Scotty Scheffler is to win it back-to-back and be the only player to do it. Now has a chance to obviously bolster further the record and win back-to-back, which, goodness gracious.
Buddy, I had forgotten how that tournament finished last year. I was watching it up north.
And, you forgot the Wyndham Clark clip out?
Yes, I did.
Oh my God! I was at Gordo's with a golf watching fervor, and everybody screaming at the television. We were placing bets.
Well,
that
because
ball goes all the way down in and whips out.
I mean, the shot he hits on 17, he makes the birdie. What a finish out of Wyndham! And
it was an incredible finish. It made me like him. I was like, I like this guy. He's got what for? Yeah, and it turns out he does have what for. But yeah, man, that was an incredible finish indeed. That's a great event. Hour number 2 forthcoming. Stay with Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show on a Balls McWednesday. Have a quiet, sleepy sort of week around Tallahassee. If you're not here, it's spring break week. I think a lot of people left town. Now they didn't leave town in droves to the point that they weren't at the ball game last night. They were out there. It was packed. Good atmosphere. And the Noles were not ready for prime time. Get drudged by the Florida Gators and lose their first game of the year. We talked about it in hour 1. And that's okay. Just as you thought you were going to get the bad taste out of your mouth, you plop down and watch Florida State basketball lose as well. The weekend's got to be better. The weekend has got to be better. Didn't we lose the other day in softball 1-0? Are we just on this kind of a run this week?
Yeah, we're on a run. Oregon beat us the couple of times we played Oregon. So, yeah, it's a bit lean. Times are lean.
Are we not any good at softball this year?
What's that?
Are we not any good at softball this year?
We're top 15 good. We're not top 5 good.
We're not, like, no chance to do anything meaningful good then.
It's within the realm, but pitching has, well, actually, I can't say that because the bats have gone cold at times too.
Yeah, I was gonna say we lost 1-0.
Yeah. And inconsistent. That happened in the Texas A&M with that doubleheader where they got smoked in game 2. In game 1, you score 3 early, and then the bats just go cold the rest of the way. But some of that was warning track stuff. I don't know. I'm debating. Might be within the realm, but it's not a juggernaut. It's not a juggernaut.
Yeah. No, I keep doing the thing where I check, It's like I do with basketball. I want to get my hopes up with the basketball program because we have an elite scorer. And then all right, I'm paying attention. And they lose again. And they lose again. And they make no run at all in the ACC tournament. And we lose again. So okay. Just tired of getting my hopes up, guys.
You need to keep bashing them because last time you bashed them is when they went on the road and won back-to-back high-profile games against Duke and Notre Dame.
UCLA or something like that, Notre Dame, like whatever it was.
Well, Notre Dame was top 5. Yeah.
So they did, and then they came home and lost.
There you go. Keep bashing. Do it. Just keep bashing them for the keeping.
Tom, they make it very easy on me. They don't win meaningful games, so it's okay. They don't.
That's patently false. That's patently false.
No, they win a cool regular season game or 2 a year, and we go, all right. And nothing. There's nothing. Show me all that postseason success. There isn't any. I want it to be different.
I teed them up. Florida State women's basketball. There you go.
Ladies, prove me wrong. Do something. I won't be holding my breath.
Don't say do something. Those words are horrible around here. Those words are horrible around here.
Hey, so really quickly, I want to point something out. This is off topic. It's not off topic. It's sports, and it's what I want to talk about. But I will say it's kind of crazy when you think about this. So we've been monitoring, obviously, free agency, and it's been fun. The NFL, around every turn, ends up even falling into it for whatever reason. They get lucky, and they just own the offseason. They own the headlines of the offseason. It doesn't matter. It's just a year-round thing. But here's what I want to point out. The free agency market and the amount of money that has been moved around and quarterbacks being moved around and the decisions by teams every day leading up to today, which was supposed to be the open tampering period and truly the start of the new NFL year. I don't know how they got around all these rules these days, Tom, but they did. And people just sign people and come together on deals and principle. And the Bills have agreed to a deal with Joey Bosa for 1 year, $12.6 million. These are all before the deals are supposed to be allowed to happen. We've watched DK Metcalf, Geno Smith. We got a total reset in Seattle. They start over with a much younger Sam Darnold, which is $100 million. Justin Fields became the new starting quarterback of the Jets. Daniel Jones is going to go compete for the starting quarterback with the Colts, which he's going to win that job, in my opinion. You got Khalil Mack and others doing their things. Chris Godwin re-signs in Tampa Bay. Now Joey Bosa. On and on and on and on and on we go. And the question remains, will Aaron Rodgers be the next quarterback of the Steelers? Where's Russell Wilson going to land? Cooper Kupp probably goes to Jacksonville. You get my point. This is crazy, all that has happened. But it occurred to me when I looked at the people in Tampa that re-signed, whether it's Bredesen at guard, whether it's Levante David for the single year, whether it's Chris Godwin, what's cool and apparent is that the franchise, Tampa Bay, has totally flipped who they are and what their reputation is. And I think back to when you and I were doing the Scuttlebucks, and I think back to the many reasons we gave why, if you had to move on from your number one draft choice and your young, talented, but mistake-prone quarterback, you would only do it for Tom Brady. And at that time, you and I had a debate about this. We were like, I know you were reluctant, understandably. And I was like, look, at the end of the day, it's Tom Brady. I just think you got to do it. I think you got to bring in Tom Brady if you can bring in Tom Brady, because in addition to Tom Brady, you were going to get Gronk, and it was going to change kind of the franchise makeup.
Yes, and I would say that at that moment, you didn't know what Brady was going to cost. I thought if Jameis was going to cost 30, Brady would cost 40.
Right, and Brady ended up costing 25.
I mean, at that point, it's like,
right.
Well, what? We wasted a lot of time here. You're telling me that you're going to come in at a discount over Jameis Winston to give me Tom Brady?
Right.
I'm going to take Brady in the discount. That's absurd.
Well, what's cool is that whether or not this was thought about beforehand or there was forethought to this at all, I don't know. I don't think so. They may have viewed this as unintended consequences, and sometimes those consequences are good. They're not always bad. You hear the word consequences and you think it's always bad. No, sometimes there are good things that come out of that are born out of a decision that you maybe didn't expect. And I think that's happened. I believe that when Tom Brady came to Tampa and the Bucs won a second Super Bowl, it wasn't just that they won a second Super Bowl. Remember, sandwiched within that were good years. They were playoff teams, division wins, and, playoff appearances, and consistent attention, national attention to that franchise, to that city, to what it was to play there, to the way it was viewed by free agents, and whether or not, Bruce Arians did the Bucs a favor too. I think Bruce Arians, a high-profile guy, forward-thinking guy, a guy who's on the right side of history, in my opinion, often with his decisions about who he hired and the people he surrounded himself with, and the way he viewed the league was very forward-thinking. It was not part of the good old boys network. And all of these things, it is, I think, more than temporarily, I believe that has transformed the way that people see playing in Tampa Bay as an option, as a viable option, where you can go and win and being part of an organization that no longer has a negative stigma attached to it. It is no longer, because they were able to, it's a little bit like, it's not the same thing, but I thought it was important long-term for the cachet and the brand of Florida State football for somebody else to win a national championship once Bowden was gone. I thought it was really important that you be more than a legendary coach with a legendary career who did legendary things, because then it would be easy to pigeonhole Florida State as, hey, you got lucky. You caught lightning in a bottle at the perfect time, and a coach who was upwardly mobile, had the charisma and the personality and the chops to get it done, and he won you some championships, and he turned your program into a name program. But that's really the only time you've mattered, is when he was there and great. And I'll grant you, it was a long stretch of time that he was there and great, but that's all you guys have ever done. Nobody did it before him, and nobody's done it after him, except that's not true. Jimbo Fisher came in and won 29 straight games and a national title and put Florida State back right front and center as a national brand and an elite brand in the world of college football. And I think that graduated the program to another place. And we're still in a place because of it in which Florida State is scrutinized more than most. And that's all because of the continued, albeit brief and not prolonged the way we would like it, success of Jimbo Fisher on the heels of Bobby Bowden. I think when the Bucs won the second Super Bowl and had all those great seasons and have now won the division 5 years in a row and gone to the playoffs, continued, didn't have the dive after anteing up Tom, and having the brand that was Tom Brady along with Gronk and winning that Super Bowl and holding that trophy aloft, and then having the good fortune, and Jason Light deserves a lot of credit for this, of bringing in another high-profile guy like Baker Mayfield, who's now transitioned into being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's already a huge personality. You have a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Mike Evans. I think you're going to have a Hall of Fame linebacker in Levante David, who continues to go to Pro Bowls and play at an elite level. Now you bring back Chris Godwin. What's my larger point? My larger point is Chris Godwin turned down more years and more money from two other locations this week. He was offered more years and more money by the New England Patriots. Now imagine that just 7 years ago, 8 years ago. The New England Patriots, the belle of the ball, a run for all ages, is offering your wide receiver in Tampa Bay, who's fresh off an injury, I might add, more years and more money than the team right there in Tampa is offering for him to come back. And he chooses to stay? Discounts. Evans took a discount. David took a discount gave the Bucs a discount. Godwin gave the Bucs a discount. Mayfield, in retrospect, gave the Bucs a discount after that 1 year where he had to prove himself in Tampa, and he did. He took less. He was offered more. He came back to Tampa. And all of them keep saying the same thing. I like this organization. I like living here. I like the way they treat the players. You can win here. I'm surrounded by good talent. I like the GM. Man, the Bucs have transformed because of the move that they made when they brought in Tom Brady.
Yes, they have. Well, and this is where that's Jason Light's second life, because he had made some excellent draft picks before Brady, the acquisition of Brady through free agency and making that run. But it hadn't parlayed into anything because we still hadn't won a playoff game since the Super Bowl in 2002. So it's like, wonderful. Thank you, Jason, that you brought us many of these excellent players, but we're not doing anything with them. And the Patriots serve as a cold and stark reminder that we could be in the netherworld of the NFL in 2 years if we're not careful. So you need to continue to cultivate draft picks, cheap options to help you re-sign and retain your top talent. Retain your top talent. That's now a thing in college football and college sports as well. It's kind of weird, but that's where the drafting comes in handy. And Jason Light has had a wonderful, wonderful career. He continues to do so. And, it looks like they've replenished on the defensive line. I understand that you had to go get Hassan Reddick because you don't like what you have at edge rusher, but they've got a couple of young guys to pair with Vita Vea. And it seems like that they're set up there in the trenches. The offensive line has been addressed. Tristan Wirfs is going to be, knock on wood, if he doesn't get hurt, a first team all-pro left tackle for the next
years and years to come,
5 to 6 years. So they've done the right things. They built it in the trenches, and then they also, let's be frank here, they've been lucky that the division sucks. They've been lucky. Now it's going to get better this year, I think, especially in Atlanta, but it's going to get better. So I don't know that 9-8 or 10-7 is going to cut it for much longer, but that's good that it did cut it for a little while because banners matter. That also tells you that access to the playoff matters and banners matter. You might not have been I think the Bucs' best regular season was actually 2021. The record would suggest that, but that team was very, very good in the regular season. That was the one that beat Philly like a drum in the first round of the playoffs and then ended up losing to the Rams. But yeah, you win, you hang banners, you consistently go to the playoffs, then you become this other thing. Jacksonville's aspiring to be that thing. Miami is aspiring to be that thing. Atlanta believes it can be that thing here because it's got a cheap quarterback option, and they're about to unload Kirk Cousins here in the near future. So this is how quickly it can change, but you're right. It's nice to have that consistency because as a Buck fan, wasn't that long ago that we signed the best guard or traded for the best guard in the league and Carl Nix, and he came down with MRSA in the locker room, and you've got dudes with hazmat suits, and the reputation in the players community was This is a team that's going to get you killed because they don't have their stuff buttoned up. Whether that was unfair or fair doesn't matter. The reputation of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization was in the crapper after winning a Super Bowl, and it didn't take very long to do that.
Well, here's the thing, and my point about guys sticking around and giving the franchise a hometown discount isn't just to celebrate that you're able to re-sign some of your most important players because they're willing to give you that discount and you retain talent. It's that people aren't sticking around to take less money and play with the Texans. People aren't taking less money to stick around and play for the Dolphins. People aren't sticking around and taking less money to hang out in Jacksonville. Like, if you look around the league, there are very few places in which players say, I'll take less to stay. It's not happening. It's not happening. Now, there are places, especially if you've got it rolling and you feel like you got a chance to run it back and maybe win a Super Bowl, guys will stick around. But the truth of the matter is, we just watched a bunch of players leave. If people want an example, Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, well,
I mean, like they're guys that are just good players that these teams would like to retain and not trade and or lose in free agency, and they don't because they aren't the highest bidder.
Well, the NFC's open for business now. You've seen how much Philadelphia lost off for their defense. It's not just Josh Sweat. They lost their best interior defensive lineman. He signed with the Patriots. They traded Gardner Johnson. There's another defensive lineman that they lost year over year. I think they're down 5 starters, and I could be wrong by 1 or 2. It might be 4, it might be 6. But off of that Super Bowl defense, and that defense was the reason, let's be honest, for them going to this other level. They were just stifling. The production's gone. And, LA was very close to beating them straight up in the NFC Championship game, and now they get another receiver. They're going to probably siphon off Kupp, but they retain Stafford.
I think they're going to cut Kupp, yeah.
They've got a young defensive front. They feel like they're in position to do something about it. Washington, obviously, with the moves that they've made, you just referenced one of them, but they also go get Deebo Samuel. Like, they believe they're positioned with a good defensive draft. The NFC is open for business, whereas the AFC has been an oligarchy. Big term we're using these days, but it's been Kansas City and then Buffalo right there if Kansas City slips up, and Baltimore is just waiting to push through. Like, those few teams have been there, and they've been waiting and salivating. NFC is open for business, man, because Philly, that defense was awesome, and now they're going to have to replace so much production year over year.
Yeah, I think that the way Washington has positioned themselves now, they're going to be a problem. Washington, 2 things are going for them. They've got a new owner and they've got an elite young quarterback, and players want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of it. And then they happen to marry that at the exact time, partly because of what you said with the rookie contract, quarterback contract that they have. They are able to make moves now that a lot of teams can't make. And they have a ton of salary cap room. So they're just going to be adding on for the next 2 years to a team that's already really good, that already won a playoff game, that already, has a quarterback that is ascending. So they're going to be a problem in the NFC for a long time to come. One
of the interesting things about them is it sounds weird. Let's see if you agree. Their 4th down approach was fearless, and it lost them some games along the way. Dan Quinn's approach, just saying the hell with it. We're going to go for it in this situation, that situation. I feel like that's easier to do when you've got a bad defense, and it's easier to do when you're not expected to be good. But 4th and 3 from the 37 or 38-yard line, and it's a long 3, maybe closer to 4, it feels a little bit different in the building on television if you're a favorite and you do that versus if you're an underdog. I wonder how that's the next thing for them, is they're going to have to deal with a boatload of expectations, and you might tense up in those situations a little bit more year over year, where last year it's like, who the hell cares? We're not supposed to be here this soon.
Well, there's a freedom that comes with that, and now that is an expectation. So you're correct. There is more on the line when you're expected to do well, but you also have players. Now you've got more players. You're bringing in more guys that can make plays. So maybe you're not finding yourself in these tense situations nearly as often because you're playing from in front and you're not feeling as desperate to make this call.
The players might execute it just fine, and Jane Daniels, if he's healthy, is going to do that. But as the head coach, I think the way you manage those situations changes a little bit as the stakes raise.
It's really cool that Josh Sweat got $19 million a year for 4 years. And by the way, that's another one of those guys that left off the Eagles defense. You're talking about free agency and guys. I just want another shout out to Josh Sweat, who had a devastating knee injury, a guy who was injured here at Florida State, and then went on to be a guy that a lot of people thought would never overcome that injury. There's a good long article about it this week. Josh Sweat bet on himself several times. And ultimately, not only does he now have a ring, he's getting $19 million a year for 4 years from Arizona. Listen, if he doesn't do a thing in Arizona, if Arizona doesn't take the next step, and until they change their quarterback, I don't think they will, it doesn't matter. He got his ring, and now he's got his money. He cashed in the chips, man, 10 years into the career. That is so cool. Good for him. I like that guy. I always did. Chef Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV. So when I saw this yesterday, the irony was I was sore and tired from my workout, and I was on a treadmill, and I saw that Tiger Woods ruptured his Achilles. And you and I haven't talked about it yet. And man, did I immediately think, well, that's that. We're done here. All this time, how many years now have we been doing the maybe, if then, he could, perhaps? Tommy, two things stand out here. First of all, when you've watched and I know you've watched a lot of it. I don't know how many of our listeners have, but what is it, the TGL or whatever it is? Mm-hmm. He limps around that thing all the time whenever I see him. I mean, he's a limping Jesse, and we know the damage that was done to his leg in the car crash that has pretty much put a capper on the end of his career. That has made it very difficult for him to finish tournaments, very difficult when the weather isn't just perfect for him to get around. But I always worry about this, and I think coaches and doctors worry about this for anybody. I worry about it for my son because of the injury he had and the surgery he had. Your body will compensate for the area that is in need of help. It will take on more of the burden, it'll shoulder more of the load. And every time I saw him limping around, and I don't know Tiger Woods from Adams. I mean, Adam, he's not like my boy or something, but I like Tiger Woods. I think he's great for golf, and I'd like to see him golf again at a high level. And every time I'd watch it, I'd go, man, that kind of compensation can't be good. All that limping around. Can't say I would have predicted this. I would have thought it would manifest itself in back problems or hip problems or whatever else. But I can't say as I'm shocked to hear that the opposite leg's Achilles is the one that snapped. And he said he was working out, was hitting balls at his house, trying to prepare, trying to get back onto the tour for a couple of events this year. I think surely he was probably trying to ready himself for the Masters. And we're done here. The other thing that stands out to me, Tom, is, and I don't know if you've noticed this watching him in the TGL, he looks like a middle linebacker. He's gotten massive again. He's huge.
Yeah. Yes, because he's bored. And so when he's bored, he just lifts. We're not done yet. We're not done with Tiger Woods yet. He's got one. Look, history is my guide. He's a very old 49. I get it.
Oh, he's a beat the hell 49, buddy.
He's 49 going on 67 with that body. I get it. But he's got one more run at Augusta in him. And it doesn't mean that he's going to win it, but Jack in 96.
Yeah, he was ancient.
Jack in 96. Yeah. What the hell? That guy is old as sin in that moment, and he nearly won the damn thing. I think Tiger's got one of those left because the weather is right. I get it's hilly. My hope for him, here's my hope, is that he leans the hell out. Stop lifting. Your body is tearing itself apart with all these muscles, Tiger, if you want to play golf. Now, if you just want to stand there, push TGL and hit a couple of shots off a mat, or actually they're not mats, they're actual real grass, which is amazing in TGL. That's one thing. But if you want to compete, my man, at some point, you're not going to be Gary Player's age and jacked out your mind hitting the first tee ball at Augusta. at 75 years old when
I
they're
don't
doing
get
the
it.
ceremonial first tee shots.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think you're probably right. It's boredom or whatever, or competition. He's challenging himself, whatever the need, this incessant need to always be challenging yourself. But is he throwing around 450 these days? He's gotten huge. This is the biggest he's ever been. The other night when it was on, I was looking at him going, good God, that's like a triple XL. It doesn't fit. Get it together.
Yeah, mid 2000s Tiger rivals this guy, because that's the guy that I recall he wore a couple of Sunday pink shirts instead of red shirts. And the reason I remember that is because they're always blood red. And then he started to play with the different colors. And that's when he did look like he was on the Luke Kuechly plan, or
he was a safety at the very least.
No, what's our guy from you love this guy. He was Moobs from USC. He was a linebacker at USC.
Yeah. No, he was a good player. Yes.
And his freshman year photo looks a lot different than his NFL photo.
He had, man, yes.
Tiger's like pulling up his sleeve as he's walking down the course, like, Jesus, dude. Hulk Hogan would look at you and say, look at those pythons, brother. Like, what are you doing? You're trying to hit a golf ball around a course. You're not trying to beat Sylvester Stallone and over the top. Like, enough.
It was Brian Cushing.
Brian Cushing. Wow.
Yeah. Brian Cushing, yes. Steroided out Brian Cushing, yes. He went from having Phil Mickelson's physique to, wow, he was gigantic.
I mean, it would not surprise me if Tiger's on a lot of roids, too, in this part of his life, because he's trying to repair his body. So that could be part of it as well.
Well, perhaps, but we know now that he just had an Achilles tendon surgery in which they described it as non-invasive. I don't know. I mean, you tear your Achilles, they've got to go in and repair the Achilles. Modern medicine's amazing, so they can maybe do that in ways that are far less invasive than it used to be, but you're still having surgery to repair your ruptured Achilles tendon. That is not an easy injury to recover from, even for young athletes that are training year-round in violent sports, let alone a 49-year-old going on a 65-year-old body who is lifting way too many weights, clearly. I mean, get it together, dude.
Yes, but the reason he still has a shot, if he wants to, now maybe he says that this is it, and if he does, that's great. But, man, I mean, we were watching it when we were down in Clearwater, at least from afar, a few of the shots. He's still carrying it 305.
Right, he hits it a million miles, yes.
Well, if you can carry the ball even 295 with his long iron play, I mean, you don't forget that over time. The short game is the thing that would be the concern because he can't work on it because of the back. But if you can hit the shots, I mean, Freddie, with one of the worst backs in human history for somebody who is in his middle ages, yeah. I mean, at that age, your back should not be. I mean, he was almost walking around in a back brace.
Right.
He still could hit the shots. And because he was able to hit the shots, he's into his mid-50s and his late 50s, and there he is in the Final Four at Augusta, meaning that you give somebody a show, and it's not this, oh, my God, he's struggling to shoot 80 like Arnold Palmer in his latter years.
Right.
I think Tiger's got one of those left in him in Augusta. I really do.
I'm rooting for it. I will say this. Bernard Longer kept making cuts into his 70s or whatever he is. So, yeah, I mean, that is the one. That is the course because it's at the same place every year. It doesn't change all that much. And, yeah, guys can make cuts and be in the running. If you make a few putts, you get hot with the putter, and you know where to miss, and you know where, obviously, to put the ball on the green. You got a shot. Tiger's won the Masters 5 times. So, you know, he does have a shot. It hurt my soul, man. There aren't too many athletes anymore, and maybe there will never be another one for me. Tiger might be that guy that is the last of the transcendent, put up on a pedestal, despite everything he's done to take himself off the pedestal in his personal life and all of that. There aren't many. I mean, in my lifetime, I've had people I can start all the way down to being a little kid and looking up to Roger Staubach and looking up to the great players of this. I know long before you were alive, the players of the 70s that I liked. And then later across all sports, you know, I was enamored back in the day with Dennis Johnson, the guard for the Celtics, obviously Larry Bird, Hakeem Olajuwon. I loved Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem the Dream was incredible to watch play. I loved watching Clyde Drexler play. I loved a lot of guys in the NBA over the years that I liked watching play. And then later Michael Jordan became that guy who was the be-all, end-all, and he was up there on the Mount Rushmore, if you will. And I thought of them differently than I thought of other athletes. I really did put them way up here. Leroy Selman was that guy for me in Tampa for a long, long time. He was the first great Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and I could be proud to go into that stadium and cheer on the Bucks because we had Leroy Selman. But as you get to be an adult and as you begin to work in the industry, and you see how the sausage is made and all that, you recognize that there are fewer and fewer guys that could ever ascend to that place and to be put up on the mantle. And Tiger Woods has in my lifetime. Now, again, he's been around a long time. We're going back to the 90s with Tiger Woods. So I was a much younger man, just as you were. You were a kid when you first started watching Tiger Woods. And because you were a kid and I was just fresh off of being a kid, you can have this idealized version of what that thing is, what that player is, what that person represents. It's very hard to do when you get to be your age, or certainly my age, to look at anybody and put them up on a throne that way. It made me sad. It's a long-winded way of saying, God dog it, man. He's breaking down. He's breaking down, Tom.
He shouldn't be breaking down this fast. That's the problem. But look, a lot of it is self-inflicted, and I'm not talking about the car accident necessarily.
No, a ton of it is self-inflicted. Yes,
it's the stuff away from the course.
Stupid Navy SEAL training, chasing the ghost of his father.
Right, while popping opioids. Like, okay, that's probably not going to keep you around a long time. But he had the wake-up call. He got away with it. We all have those moments in life where we go, oh, I was probably not smart. But for him, it was an elongated period of time. The thing, I have such a weird relationship with Tiger Woods, the athlete, in my brain. So when he won the amateur and he was wearing the straw hat and the shorts and the pink shirt,
yeah,
that was my junior golf tournament, second grade going into third grade. It was on the television as we were at the banquet for the tournament and watching him make the putts and make the rally and that whole thing. And through his early career, I did not like him because he would drag his putter on the greens. He would chuck his wedge into the grass, and stick it into the grass after he missed a shot. Things like that I just thought were so childish. But I like the redemptive Tiger Woods. I love the Tiger Woods who didn't hit a driver in the Open. And I loved how ruthless he was. But what's funny is, and I'll keep this very short on the historical thing, the more retro golf I watch, the more I realize the heroes of the past were just as big of jerks. Many of them, most of them, were just as big of jerks when they were in their 20s and their 30s and were as pouty as Tiger Woods was. But the people that were older at that time, they did the same thing that we do with Jordan. Like, he never missed a shot. He never lost a game.
Right.
The margin was very thin to win those games. And in the same way, Player never did that. Gary Player was one of the biggest prissy people on the course.
He's also, to this day, one of the great a-holes in the game.
He played like it in the 70s and the 80s. I'm watching this stuff now. Now, if he was a front runner, he was a showman, and he would really lean into it. But he was this side of Sevy in terms of, and the Spanish temper that is stereotypical, but is very true for he and Rahm. And Jack had his moments where what are you chucking a club for? Stop being a baby. So as we get on in time, the more I actually appreciate Tiger. Usually it goes the other way. But yeah, I appreciate Tiger.
I'll just say this. If you're young listening to this, understand that if you see a player of any level of true greatness, transcendent, as we like to say, guys that will live on forevermore in the annals of greatness when they document the sport for certain eras. And it could be Muhammad Ali in boxing, Ben Hogan in golf, Jack in golf, whoever you want, Jerry Rice in football, right? Joe Montana, guys like that. Every era, you name it. If you were the best player or one of the two or three best players in your sport for long periods of time. You're a Hall of Famer. You're all these things. You're recognized. You're world renowned, not just because you're good in your sport, but you've somehow made it into the commercial world and all that other stuff. If you're one of those guys, the chances are you are an incomplete person. You are a maniacal a-hole, and you are impossible to deal with in your private life, because you can't get that way without destroying almost everything in your path. And you can't get that way without being so ultra competitive as to be completely off-putting as a human being. That's just how that works.
Yeah.
So it's like all these guys that I was like, oh no, he's great, he's so nice. Oh, I'm sure he was not when he was 24 and he was chasing the dream. I don't think so. I think he was singularly focused in a way that didn't make him a very good, balanced person.
Yeah, there was a scene in Drive to Survive this season where Lando Norris of McLaren, whose star is on the rise, he's one of those 5 or 6 great drivers in the world. And if you're F1 and you're great, you're the greatest of the greatest. And he's playing some combination of pickleball and small tennis outdoor game against another one of the drivers, and he's losing significantly. And he's dropping down with personal things that he's saying to the competitor. And they're boys. So the other guy doesn't take it personally, but I go, oh my God. It reminded me of listening to Jimbo Coach when he was mad. I'm like,
yeah,
that crossed the line. What is wrong with you? It's a game of tennis. You're making $40 million a year to drive a car.
Right.
What is wrong with you? But to your point, yeah.
That's the way those guys. You think Tom Brady was friendly?
No, no, and a lot of these guys play ping pong in the locker rooms. I can only imagine. Jesus.
Well, that's the Last Dance. Watching Michael Jordan. This poor usher. This poor guy. This guy's making $20,000 a year. He's taking every penny he's got.
But at least 30 years later, he had the iconic shoulder move that everybody saw during COVID.
My favorite part about it is it pissed Jordan off. He wanted to cut the guy's throat.
Right.
By the way, my friends at Tried and True Consulting want to hear from you. By the way, also, if you are a Jeff Cameron Show advertiser, you get a free ad board for your business. What are we doing out here? They've been offering free ad boards to everybody. Let's go. Let's go. It's free. It is a free ad board. If you own a business and you got a wall, you should be reaching out to Tried and True Consulting. How could you not? They want to do free things for you. Like put up a 55-inch 4K television that lets everybody know what you do and do well and get your business exposure out there in other locales. All they got to do is put it up. That's all they got to do. Installation free, 6 months of free ads at all other locations across Tallahassee. That's huge. So if you have a TV and you already have one ready, well, then they'll give it to you in a bonus with the ads. I mean, you're all set here. Make sure you reach out to Don. Make sure you figure it out and go see our friends at Tried and True Consulting. Give them a call today, triedandtrueconsulting.com. Make it happen. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. You have to help me understand these sorts of things. I don't know anymore, although it does involve a sport I love and a team I love and a player I love. And I've heard something about this, but I don't get it. So the Paul Skeens rookie debut patch autograph set, which was released, it's a card that's released, and a kid, I guess a kid got the card, which good for him. And there was all these rewards that came with it, but it is now setting a public record for any Skeens card and any RDPA, whatever the hell. That's a rookie debut patch autograph card, which, by the way, collecting cards. Did you ever collect cards? Because I did. Did you ever collect baseball cards, or was the era over by the time you were a kid?
No, it was there, and I really enjoyed card shows. I collected specifically hockey cards, as you might imagine. And that is one of the great smells, actually, in the world, a collection of smells. Either a brand new pack of cards itself, or the plastic card holder pages. When they're brand new and you put them in a binder, that is actually of the manufactured smells on earth versus fresh cut grass, for example. That is an outstanding scent, is the plastic that you put the cards in.
The smell of a pack of Topps baseball cards, specifically Topps baseball cards that you would get at 7-Eleven. And I would ride my Mongoose bike up to 7-Eleven. and I would buy packs of baseball cards. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I couldn't wait to open the pack, but I still had to drive the bike all the way back home. And the bike, the home was, freaking, I don't know, 5 miles from where I was. So I was riding my bike all the way back, and I'm trying to hold these cards that I opened. Really, after a while, I got to where I had the patience to wait till I got into my driveway where I'd meet my friends and open up the pack. Of course, you had that cardboard bubble gum that we all still ate for whatever reason that was in the pack, but something about the fresh smell from the pack and the feel of those baseball cards, it sticks with me and will forevermore. The smell of it, the smell of the card, the smell of the bubble gum. And then you're right. I had the card placeholder where I could open up and place in alphabetical order all the cards, or team by team, right? So you had Braves under B and Pirates under P and Mets under M, and it would do all that. And I would just like to look at the slots as they became filled. It's like the same satisfaction one gets when they mow the lawn and then stare at it or vacuum or clean anything and then step back and look at the work you've done. It was the same satiating feeling when you opened up your card holder and you saw there's no more room in the B's. We're going to have to get another one. We're going to have to go get another holder. There's just not enough room. And pretty soon you had stacked 7 or 8 of these things, these baseball card holders, which had the little trapper keeper cover. You just open it up. You do the little turn it sideways and it would open outward like that. Oh, buddy, loved it. Apparently these days, and it would have been really cool to know this, you can get one that has an autograph from one of your favorite players, and everybody wants that. Everybody's trying to get that. And that's what this is. It's a rookie debut patch autograph set. And so you open up the cards, and if you've got the one, it's the debut. Well, get this. Late last week, after that card was found, it's already up to $220,000 being offered for the card. And from Thursday to Tuesday, the bidding had gotten so out of hand that it moved to $660,000. Wow. 56 total bids. The previous record for any Skeens card was $123,000. Now, it's set to become the most coveted rookie card ever, which is really quite insane. I mean, he's past Jackson Holiday and Ellie De La Cruz and Caminero and all those guys. But yeah, like a kid won this thing originally, and now the Fanatics Collect Vault guy is going to try to buy it up. But how about that family? Once again, it's akin to going out in your uncle's freaking garage and finding a Van Gogh. This guy opens the pack. He gets the card, $660,000.
Well, that's something we were chasing as kids too. At least I was. I don't know if you were looking for value of the cards, but you remember the Beckett catalogs? Do you remember those? Did you ever get those catalogs? Oh man, I used to live by the Beckett. And you look at the value of one specific card, and it could be $1.75. You're like, oh my God, that Gretzky is $1.75. Can you believe I found it in the pack? Or they had the electric ice set, which was the same card, except it was made metallic looking, and they cropped it a little bit. So the top of the card was a little bit different. If the edges were fine, that could be worth $5.
Right.
So I thought of it as a kid, not only about the smells and the sights and the value of my favorite players, but then also maybe it's because I grew up in the era of free agency and Sports Center. I always looked at the dollar value of the cards. So that makes sense to me.
I never looked at the value. It wasn't until many years later when I even realized that I just wanted the cards that were scarce. I wanted, I didn't have the business acumen at 9, 10 years old to be thinking about what a card was worth because I didn't grow up in that era. And it just didn't, like, you wanted a Pete Rose rookie. You wanted a Hank Aaron rookie. You wanted a whatever rookie just because they were kind of hard to find. And so if you found one, you loved it, you showed it off. You had heard about there being cards that might be worth a lot of money, but the chances you were because the internet didn't exist. So you didn't have that information. You'd have to go to like a card show And I wasn't going to ask my parents to take me to a card show. I don't think I cared that much. They'd have them at the Bayfront Center in St. Pete sometimes, but I didn't know. I never went.
It was a cottage industry by the time that I was a kid. This is a little bit later in Pinellas County, but they were a Countryside Mall all the time. Clearwater Mall all the time. Maybe once every 6 weeks at one of the other malls. Like they would alternate. So I would be at card shows all the time. There was a guy in Oldsmar that I used to go to. His name was Keith. And Keith was young. He was probably 25, 26 years old. And I'd bring in $5 that I had saved up or I earned by taking the trash out. And he'd be like, okay, how many Roman Hammerlicks do you want today, young man? I remember that. He must have gotten such a laugh out of that.
You know, every time you bring up Oldsmar, it makes me smile because it was not a place that I often saw growing up. I scored one of our greatest goals on the Southside Youth Soccer League Eagles team that played over in Boca Ciega. From the right wing, Tom, it was a stunning shot into the left corner of the goal against Oldsmar in the first round of the Gisa Cup playoffs. No. I remember it like it was yesterday. We silenced those Oldsmar fans. It was beautiful.
Oldsmar is all at once a nothing area and a very important area because if you don't want to take the causeway and get from Eastlake or Palm Harbor to Tampa, you go through Oldsmar. And they have plenty of shops. And there's nothing wrong with Oldsmar, but it's also kind of like, it's Oldsmar.
On that day, they fell victim to the golden right foot.
They still talk about it in Oldsmar.
Oh, that kid, Cameron. What a stunning shot from outside the box. We never recovered. Final hour, fourth coming.